Greetings, everyone. This is John Contreras, Greek-American journalist. Today is the 14th of March, 2007. The time here in Los Angeles is 11:30. So, I got a very interesting report, basically, that has to do with the fact that neither Obama's government nor Trump's government is really dealing with the whole ISIS issue. Okay? This is a very, very serious issue, and it really, really needs to be addressed, because what is taking place right now around the world is just totally freaking messed up on the part of ISIS. And basically the European Union, the United States government, Turkey, Israel, they're all turning a blind eye. Okay? They couldn't give a flipping you-know-what, ladies and gentlemen. Angela Merkel, none of these people care really about what ISIS and Al-Qaeda and all these other terrorist groups and these so-called moderate groups, okay, moderate opposition groups in Syria, they don't care what these groups are doing at all. And this is very, very disconcerting, to say the least. So the issue is who is going to have the guts to stand up and start basically speaking the truth about what's going on, okay? This is really what the issue is, okay? This issue, of course, has had repercussions for many, many countries out there that have been affected not only by ISIS, but also, ladies and gentlemen, by the fact that what ISIS has done in Syria has had severe consequences with regards to the whole migrant crisis, okay? The whole migrant crisis. In other words, the powers that be are exploiting basically what's going on there, okay, in Syria and in other Middle Eastern nations. And what they're doing is basically allowing all this to develop into a whole big brand new crisis, which is the migrant crisis, which is what I'm talking about right now. So anyway, please take this live feed and share it all over Facebook right now. I'm trying to do my best here to get this news out to you. I've been doing a lot of professional videos lately through Google's live program, through their live publishing program in my page here. But, it's just unbelievable that now all of a sudden they have taken that down. They've taken that feature down for me, and they're not allowing me to do it. Gee, I think it might have something to do with the fact that all of my broadcasts so far, I've been getting thousands and thousands of hits, views. And I think that Facebook, with their little frickin' surreptitious little frickin' spy program, they're starting to figure this out and therefore limit journalists like me who dare to speak the truth on their vile little social media construct, which, by the way, doesn't like it when people talk about ISIS. They especially don't like the fact that there's a lot of journalists out there, whether they're Syrian, whether they're Middle Eastern, whoever they are, Iranian, American, doesn't matter. But whoever, though, speaks about basically all the evils that ISIS has done, and whoever basically shows, just basically all the ramifications about what's going on, okay, particularly in the way of victims, ladies and gentlemen, in the way of victims, okay, they don't like that at all. As a matter of fact, they censor you. Yes, you heard that correctly. Facebook will censor your ass if you dare to show victims, okay, from ISIS attacks on your Facebook wall. And there's been a lot of people out there who have been doing this for the past several years at least now. And what do? They censor them. You're not allowed to talk about this stuff. Gee, isn't that interesting? I find it very interesting that they don't want people seeing all the victims from ISIS. Whether we're talking about, ladies and gentlemen, people that are for Assad's government or who are part of the opposition. Now, I think for everyone who has a brain out there, okay, who has a freaking brain, I think by now, ladies and gentlemen, we all know that Assad is not an enemy for anyone. Assad is a friend of Russia, he's a friend of the West, he's a friend of America. Assad means no anyone harm because he's just a simple guy who loves his country and wants it to be free from New World Order tyranny, wants it to be free from Israeli tyranny, from American tyranny, okay? He just wants to be free, along with his people. So, basically, take this and share it all over social media as it's going live right now. I'm going to get into a lot of important issues that are tied around this. The main issue at hand right now is this. It has to do with the fact that we have Aleppo Part 2 in development right now, unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen. Aleppo Part 2. What do I mean? Okay. Aleppo Part 2. What is Aleppo Part 2? Aleppo Part 2 is none other than Mosul, Iraq. Mosul, Iraq. What's going on in Mosul, Iraq, ladies and gentlemen? Well, a wholesale slaughter. People are freaking getting slaughtered there right now. Well, gee, who's behind it? The usual suspects. ISIS, okay? Al-Qaeda. They're all one and the same, ladies and gentlemen. It's nothing more than the Israeli government and, of course, Mossad and all the fucking usual suspects. Excuse my French, but it's true. And until people wake up to this reality, we're not going to make any headway with this issue. Okay? It's just that plain and simple. Until people start, naming things as they ought, calling a spade, you can forget about making any headway with this. What needs to take place? What needs to take place is Donald Trump needs to wake up to the fact that, our so-called ally Israel, they're really ISIS, okay? They're called Israeli Special Intelligence Service. That's the real name of ISIS, ladies and gentlemen. And I hope you figured that out by now with the millions and millions of views that are taking place right now. In the past, I would say recent year or so, on YouTube, for videos that are basically daring to show all this or daring to get into the truth about all this. Now, I'm going to show you some facts basically right now on the screen and, of course, for my radio audience. And so basically, you're going to get a real taste of what I mean. So this is John Contreras, Greek-American journalist. I'm coming to you from Los Angeles. My show is called Greek News on Demand. Okay, this is being done primarily for the great online radio network UCY.TV. And I'm going to show that to my YouTube viewers right now. .com. So this is a fantastic online radio network that comes out with some of the best shows out there, okay? That comes out with some of the best shows out there on the New World Order. Here's my show, by the way, Greek News on Demand. The Corbair Report is broadcast here and so on and so forth. Brandon Tuberville is broadcast here. So basically, you can see the URL on your screens right here, ucy.tv, okay? All right. So please support them. They come out with the best shows round the clock, exposing government corruption, New World Order, you name it. And I'm happy to be a part with them and participate with them with my news website, GreekNewsOnDemand.com, okay? So basically, ladies and gentlemen, what do we need to know here with regards to this whole issue? Just know this. The government lies to us, the media lies to us, end of story. Now, as to how much Donald Trump knows about this stuff, that's another issue, and we can get into that too. But let me just play for you this clip, and this has been seen, like I said, by millions of people for the past year or so on YouTube, where we see two prominent Jewish authors, Dan Raviv, who's very well known, and Yossi Melman. They wrote a book in 1990, ladies and gentlemen, called Every Spy a Prince. The complete history of Israel's intelligence community, okay? They were on C-SPAN back then, talking with Brian Lamb, who's now the CEO of C-SPAN. Listen very carefully, ladies and gentlemen, to what they say about who ISIS is.
This is a 1990 book notes excerpt where Brian Lamb interviews authors Dan Raviv and Yossi Melman. The book title is Every Spy a Prince, The Complete History of Israel's Intelligence Community.
Plots against the state of Israel, political plots and others.
You tell the story about how you tried to find out what they call the Mossad when they deal with publicly?
I thought it was a reasonable question, but the trouble is you can't pick up the phone book. There's no Langley in Israel that you can look up CIA, or in our case, the Mossad. We thought we should ask, what shall we call it in English? You can translate the Hebrew words, as I said, Mossad Institute, but when they write a letter to their friends in the CIA or the British intelligence, what do they call themselves? It took a while. It was a matter of asking the Prime Minister's spokesman. The best you could do, because officially the Mossad is under the Prime Minister's office. And I think he sort of wondered why you want to know and all that, so we explained. And he came up with the Israeli Secret Intelligence Service. And if it were to have initials, it would be ISIS. Just simple words like that. Interestingly enough, for a kind of a British model.
Kind of a British model. Isn't that interesting? Why don't we play that again for those who just didn't get it?
The best you could do, because officially the Mossad is under the Prime Minister's office. And I think he sort of wondered why you want to know and all that, so we explained. And he came up with the Israeli Secret Intelligence Service. And if it were to have initials, it would be ISIS. Just simple words like that. Interestingly enough, for a kind of a British model.
Isn't that interesting? Kind of a British model. That was back in 1990, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, you heard that correctly. 1990. Okay? 1990, they told us about who ISIS is. But, of course, back then, we didn't know who ISIS was. ISIS, well, that was about November, December, I believe, 2012. Isn't that correct? That is correct. What haven't people understood by now, by all the so-called crazy conspiracy theorists who've been talking about this stuff for years, that Israel basically is leading the New World Order? The state of Israel was not created for religious purposes. It was not the fulfillment of biblical prophecy, ladies and gentlemen. And I'm getting to all this, okay, on the Greek side of things too, by tying all this in with Greece, because Greece has had hundreds of years of dealing with the Jews as a people, with the state of Israel, just with world Judaism in general. Okay, this dates back to the Turkish occupation of Greece, whereupon the Turks gave the green light to Jewish slave traders to enslave thousands of young Greek boys and girls to the international slave market at that time. It was the Jews that created slavery, ladies and gentlemen. They started the international slave trade way back in the Venetian Empire, as a matter of fact, around the late 1300s, 1400s. They started, okay, on behalf of the Venetian Empire, by enslaving Greeks on Greek islands. Yes, you heard that correctly. That's according to a top scholar, Webster Tarpley, and others that have written about this. And you can learn about this, too, in my book, Hellenic Crisis, by John Contouris. That's Hellenic Crisis by John Contouris, where basically I go over this in detail. And let me just show you really quick on the. So basically on the screen now you can see my website, johncontouris.com. Okay, that's me. You can also learn about the books that I have written about Greece, which you can see right here. The first one is called Your Academic Guide to the Greek Language, Culture, and Civilization. Okay, there you're going to learn all the details about the richness, the power, the glory of ancient Greece, of the Greek Christian Byzantine Empire. There you'll learn all the mysteries of ancient Greek, and so on and so forth. It's a must-read. Also, here's my other book, Hellenic Crisis, okay? This has to do with the Greek economic crisis. We have all the details. We have all the facts as to how it actually happened, who was behind it. Of course, we now know who was behind it, and that was, of course, the Troika, which is the IMF, International Monetary Fund, the European Central Bank, the European Commission, George Papandreou, the then Greek Prime Minister, who is three-quarters Jewish, Strauss-Kahn from the IMF, Angela Merkel from Germany and her Finance Minister Schäuble, German and French banks who have taken the majority of Greek bailout funds, the United States government, particularly Hillary Clinton and her State Department, according to, ladies and gentlemen, WikiLeaks from last year, they came out with leaks saying how Hillary Clinton played a huge role in the Greek economic crisis by telling all of Europe and Merkel at that time, this is around November of 2011, to put Greece under another austere program, okay? Another bailout program, which this time would be accompanied by very austere measures, cutbacks on salaries, pensions, government benefits, you name it. And that's the reason why Greek people, unfortunately, are suffering right now, all under false pretext, ladies and gentlemen. Why? Because they needed to get to our natural resources, because they had to basically put, okay, as collateral on the debt that Greece would now owe to the Troika, okay, they had to put the natural resources of Greece, all right? They had to do it because it was a concerted plan and effort and a conspiracy, mind you, on the part of all these aforementioned dark powers in order to screw Greece, destroy it as a nation, and steal their natural resources. So if you lend from the Troika, particularly the IMF, you're going to have to put your natural resources as collateral. And that is a very, very dangerous, very evil, very vile program that they have developed over the years in order to screw nations, steal their wealth, and basically set up puppet regimes in order to control them, for obvious reasons. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the New World Order. So, read John Perkins' book, Confessions of an Economic Hitman, New York Times bestseller, and boom, you'll learn it all there. You will learn it all there. So, this is what I go over with in my books, so please check it out. Also, check out my YouTube channel, John Contouris. Here it is. John Contouris is spelled John, Koun as in Nancy, T as in Tom, OU, R as in Robert, I as in Irene, S as in Sam. Okay, that's my channel. I have a lot of my Greek broadcasts dubbed in English. Okay, a lot of my videos are in Greek, but a lot of them are in English. I also blog about a lot of different important issues. I create a lot of videos about important issues for YouTube. That affect, of course, American politics. I've been making a lot of videos lately about Pizzagate, okay, and how it ties in with Greece. Yes, you heard that correctly. So you're not going to want to miss that. So let's get to the issue at hand here now. So what is the issue at hand right now? The issue right now is the fact that Mosul is being besieged and bombarded, at least half of it, okay? It's a big city in Iraq. It already has a long history now having to deal with U.S. imperialism, okay? Dating back to the beginning of the Iraq War in 2003 under false pretexts from the Bush government when they said that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction. That was a complete lie, all right? Total lie, and it was all, of course, based on the false false flag attack 9/11 in 2001 when they said that Arabs hit us. Okay, that's just a complete lie too. That's been deconstructed and debunked so many times, not only by conspiracy theorists who have been proven right over and over again, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, I'm talking about the government's official story here. It's been debunked, been disproven as a fraud, but also by the U.S. the 9/11 Commission itself, who years ago, after the completion of the 9/11 Commission, came out and said, it was something like 7 out of 10 of the commissioners, they came out and said, and you can Google this and find the information yourselves, that the whole report was a fraud and a government cover-up. okay, and that the government's lying to us, okay? All right? Now, many world figures have come out and said now that Israel, of course, was behind 9/11 in cooperation with Bush and Cheney and all the usual suspects on the American side of things, okay? Netanyahu was a key player in this. On 9/11, when he was asked by the press, what does he think about this? He says, oh, this is very good for Israel. He said that the attack on 9/11 was very good for Israel. They lied when they said that Palestinians that day were dancing in the street. That wasn't on 9/11, ladies and gentlemen. That was a video that a camera crew had shot there about a year prior when they went there doling out candy to the little Palestinian children. And they were so happy to see candy, which they rarely see, that they were jumping and shouting for joy because of that. And all these damn fools out there, okay, have said that that's a video of them celebrating 9/11 and cursing the Jews. You guys are in the media, all of you who have spread these lies for years, you're liars, okay? You're deceivers. And you've already been exposed by millions of people in America and around the world for your lies and deception because you're controlled by very powerful Zionist Jewish interests who control your channels. Donald Trump has come out and said the same evil, disgusting lie that, oh, the Palestinians were dancing in the street that day because America got attacked. That's a lie. Okay? Now, what I want to go over basically is what's going on real quick in Mosul. Mosul's getting attacked again by all the usual suspects. Okay? Israel, the United States, because right now it's getting bombarded by the hell out of it by U.S. troops, but of course by Saudi Arabia. Okay? Saudi Arabia really wants Yemen. There are Saudi Arabian, United States, and Israeli interests in that country, ladies and gentlemen. I find it very interesting, though, how Donald Trump did not ban Saudi Arabia, did not put one of the biggest human rights abusers, one of the biggest terrorist states on his travel ban list. Isn't that something? Isn't that interesting? He also didn't put Israel. Israel is a very well-recognized, known terrorist state. Okay? They were behind many terrorist attacks in the 20th century. Of course, the USS Liberty attack they did when they bombed the USS Liberty in 1967 during the Six-Day War, and they blamed it on the Egyptians. Okay? All the survivors of that day from the USS Liberty, many of which are still alive, they, on a regular basis, talk about all this wherever they can, okay, wherever they can get their voice heard. Eyewitnesses, ladies and gentlemen, that our so-called ally Israel attacked us. They attacked us on 9/11. They've done so much evil, I can't even recount this. They're also behind, okay, and are still behind all the modern-day woes, okay, suffering of the Greek people. Yes, you heard that correctly. Now, I've written a book, like I said, about this Hellenic crisis. You'll find all the details there, so please check it out. You can find that on Amazon's Kindle and also on Smashwords. Hopefully I'll have it in print soon with the top Christian publisher. So, God willing, we're going to get it done in print. But in a nutshell, in 1964, it was Israel that basically was behind the overthrow of the Greek junta which brought prosperity and a revival to the Greek people on all fronts, economically, religiously, culturally, okay? And they dealt very severely at that time with the communists who were destroying Greece, okay? So that's a very, very key issue about Greece's history that people need to learn about and need to know, all right? So anyway, besides all that, it was September of 1973, whereupon the Yom Kippur War started, okay? Israel asked the then head of the Greek government and also the Greek junta, George Papadopoulos, if they could fly over Greek airspace to go basically attack Arab states. And he told them emphatically, no, get the hell out. I'm not here to support your terrorist campaigns. So they went and whined and bitched, excuse me for my Greek or my French, to Henry Kissinger in the State Department and said, get rid of this guy. He's not allowing us to go attack the Arab states. So the CIA and the Mossad went in there and overthrew him. A guy who was a very righteous guy, and who in 6 years built up Greece on all fronts. I mean, gave Greece a glory, an era of utter glory, okay? He brought in foreign investment. He worked together with Aristotle Onassis to build up Greece. He did so many amazing things within a short amount of time. And unfortunately, America and Israel got rid of him because he didn't want to play their dirty game. Nixon tried to make a overture to him with Spiro Agnew. They were successful. But, of course, as you know, Nixon had to resign because of Watergate, okay? A total frickin', which is nothing in comparison to all the crimes of Bill Clinton, George H. Walker Bush, George W. Bush, Obama, and so on and so forth, okay? So, you know, Israel played a key role in that, and that is what led to at least 40 years of socialism and social decay in Greece on all fronts. And this is precisely the reason why Greece is in an economic crisis right now. So we have Israel to thank for all that, really, honestly, and Henry Kissinger in the U.S. State Department. Anyway, besides all that, let's go back to Mosul. Mosul is getting pounded right now by U.S. troops. Okay? Donald Trump, is he saying anything about this? What the hell is going on right now? Oh, the deep state is attacking him. Oh, okay, really? He could at least say something about Mosul. But the fact that he did not put Saudi Arabia on his travel ban list, doesn't that tell you something? Vile, evil Saudi Arabia, who treats basically minorities and women like total shit? Now, let's see a video from RT on this. This all, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, this is Anissa from her show, In the Now.
Hey, world. Just a quick question. Where are all the I stand with Mosul hashtags? Half the city is now completely besieged and being relentlessly pounded with airstrikes. Remind you of anywhere? Yeah, Aleppo. You sure cared when the exact same thing happened there. Or at least you pretended to. Because now that U.S. jets are raining down bombs on areas with more than double the population of East Aleppo, you're saying nothing. Where are your cries of genocide and ethnic cleansing now that government troops are retaking a city overrun by extremists? Where's the viral civilian casualties social media campaign? Nothing. You know what? Keep turning the other way, because your silence is golden and speaks much louder than your lousy hashtags.
Okay, that was In the Now with Anissa from RT. She's a very well-known journalist. So, ladies and gentlemen, I mean, this is just utterly ridiculous what's going on. What I would like to show you, however, is a little bit about Afra Dogger. Afra is a friend of mine, a colleague. We started interviewing her for Greek media last year. She's a very well-known political activist and journalist in Syria, okay? She's a very wonderful young lady, and she's to be commended for the fact that she has put her whole life on the line to save her people, the Syrian people, from what's going on there, okay? She's obviously an Assad supporter, and we commend her for that. So she provides us with some of the best reporting, ladies and gentlemen, about what's going on there. She gives us a bird's eye view, a first-hand look. Okay, she gives us first-hand information about what actually is taking place there. You're not going to find a better source anywhere. I can tell you that right now. Okay? She's an architect by trade, but she now is a political activist and journalist reporting on what's going on there, on the truth about what's going on there. Now, the Greek people have a huge interest in what's going on there right now, and I'm going to tell you why. Should what in this part of the world concern Greece, right? Why does the migrant crisis, why does Syria, what's going on in Syria and in Iraq, why does all this concern Greece? Well, because there's a migrant crisis. Why is there a migrant crisis? Well, because that bastard Obama and Hillary Clinton created ISIS in cooperation with Israel, okay, in its present form. ISIS has been around since, at least the 90s. It's none other than the Israeli Mossad, Israeli Special Intelligence Services, ISIS, hello, okay? Again, ISIS is Israeli Special Intelligence Services. In other words, the Israeli Mossad, they've been around for years. The Mossad, of course, was established in the 1960s. And according to top journalists from Veterans Today, Roy Cohn, who was Donald Trump's mentor in the 80s, okay, who was a very powerful Jewish lawyer and also the former head of the Jewish mafia, he was also behind the creation of Mossad back then in the 60s, okay? There's a lot, too, about him that I'd love to go over, but that's for another broadcast, actually. So, basically, the issue here is how does this all tie in with Greece? Well, it's obvious. I think the answer is obvious. There's a migrant crisis right now that's, been going on for 2 years roughly, that is a direct result of these wars in the Middle East, in Syria, in Iraq, and elsewhere. And all these people in these countries have basically been forced to leave and migrate elsewhere. Now, right now, you have a big portion of them that, of these so-called migrants, let's say right now, of these so-called migrants that are not from, let's say, Syria and Iraq, all right? About 15% of the so-called immigrants that have flooded into Greece are actually Syrian, most of which are Muslim, not Christian, okay? Muslim, not Christian. That is very key here. Now, anyway, besides all that, I'm just giving you the statistics right now from the Greek state. About 85% of the so-called migrants in Greece, okay, those people have nothing to do with war-torn countries, ladies and gentlemen. They're exploiters. They're exploiting the whole situation. And this situation in Greece needs to stop. Now, obviously, if there are people right now in Greece who are Syrian who support Assad, whether they're Muslim or Christian, all right, we support them. It's just that plain and simple. Okay, but Greece cannot take the situation anymore, and the majority of these people need to be sent back immediately. They need to go back, of course, to Turkey, from which they came originally, because Turkey is the big base where they all go and get their asylum papers and so on and so forth. And, Turkey, of course, takes care of millions of these people right now, all right? But right now, Greece cannot deal with this anymore. So the majority of these people need to be sent out. Now, we need to get rid of a lot of these people who are coming from terror-sponsored states. A lot of these people are Somalian, they're Pakistani, they're Moroccan, okay? They're from Afghanistan. They have nothing to do with Syria or Iraq. So again, we emphasize, we Greeks support those that support the Assad regime and, of course, Russia, right? Whether they're Christian or Muslim, right? Now, obviously, it's a known fact, the Muslim Syrians, okay, in Syria, they support Assad. They have obviously nothing to do with terrorism, okay? There's a lot of Muslims out there that are good people, that they just love freedom, okay? They have nothing to do with terrorism, okay? But the problem here with our Jewish-controlled media is that they're labeling basically all Muslims pretty much as terrorists. They've done that for years, but now there's been sort of a different twist of things right now, recently. What's taking place recently, particularly with the election of Trump? Trump has come out and just basically, made a blanket statement for all these people, saying that basically, if you're from one of these countries on his travel ban list, okay, like Syria, Yemen, and so on and so forth, okay, and you're a Muslim, then you're dangerous for this country. Obviously, that's crazy and insane, but what's taken place here is sort of a reversal here on the part of the media. The media is now demonizing Donald Trump, and saying, oh, look at him. He's making a blanket statement. He's generalizing basically all the Muslims from all these countries, saying they're evil. He's a racist. He's evil. Oh, my God. When in reality, it's always been the mainstream news media that has grouped Muslims all together in the same group and said they're all terrorists. Okay? So you got to understand what's going on there and how they're playing this vile, dirty, filthy game. All right? All these aforementioned parties. So basically, let's go back to now how this influences Greece. The migrant crisis basically has had severe effects, severe consequences for Greece. A lot of these people, like I said, have flooded into Greece illegally without papers. Okay? A lot of them that have fled into Greece, most of them, okay, that have fled into Greece illegally, who originally received asylum and papers in Turkey, what they have done is once they arrived on the shores of Greece, they take these papers and they throw them out. They trash them. They throw them in the trash. They get rid of them. So that way they look like they're asylum seekers in Greece, so they can basically stay in Greece and so on and so forth. All right? So that in itself is a whole scam. And there are many groups that are involved with this, particularly non-governmental groups that are operating right now in Greece, most of which are illegal, 100% unconstitutional. And they're actually exacerbating this whole crisis because what they're doing is giving these so-called migrants, which are illegal immigrants, the feeling that they belong there, that they have a right to be there. Okay? When in reality, the high European court just came out with a decision, okay, that said, and this is about a week ago or so, that said no member state of the European Union is obligated to accept any so-called immigrant. They can turn them away if they want to. They're not obligated to give anyone papers. End of story. What we need to understand here, though, is that there are a lot of Syrians who need our love and support because they support Assad. They're good people. Over 70% of the people in Syria, okay, support Assad. They're not with the opposition. The opposition is roughly 30%, okay? The opposition is not a real opposition, ladies and gentlemen. Many of the so-called oppositions, Syrians of the opposition, they actually support ISIS. A lot of them, I would say, in my opinion, they're deceived. But only Miss Afra Daher, the lady I just showed you, she can explain a lot of that to us. And that's why it's important to see her articles on GreekNewsOnDemand.com and on other top posts, on other top blogs out there, including the Duran, Brandon Tuberville's blog, and many others out there. Right? She will shed a lot of insight because, like I said, she's an excellent source. So the migrant crisis has caused irreparable harm, okay, to Greece. You have all these so-called non-governmental organizations spread across Greece, all right, along with all these so-called hotspots, all right, that are facilitating all these illegal immigrants, okay? And again, most of these so-called immigrants in Greece, 85% are not even Syrian. They have nothing to do with Syria or Iraq, okay? They're from other countries. And according to the estimates, in the past year or more, about 1 million of these people have fled into Greece in the past year. Again, in the past year. And the Greek government saying, oh, there's only 60,000 extra migrants in Greece. That's a bold-faced lie, and we have all the proof. A lot more people right now in Greece, about 1 million of them, unfortunately. So let's get a quick taste. We saw the video right now from RT from Mosul, okay? Which just says it all. I mean, you have all these people months ago, well, actually not months ago, for the past several years that have been talking about what's going on in Syria, okay? They've been talking about how Obama created ISIS. We've known this since May of 2015, all right? Almost 2 years now. This all came out with WikiLeaks and, of course, with a huge case that involved Obama's government, the State Department, Hillary's State Department, and, of course, Judicial Watch, which basically revealed all this stuff back then, around the spring of 2015. And, all the court documents basically they obtained through this court case basically revealed, that Obama was already preparing to support ISIS back in October of 2012, months before the actual invasion into Syria and into Iraq. So we saw what happened in Aleppo months ago, okay? And Aleppo's still suffering, and we need to support the Syrian people there. We need to put pressure on Donald Trump to do something about this to help the Syrian people, because during the campaign he said, well, Assad's, not such a bad guy, and blah, blah, blah. And then there were some interviews where he said, well, he's sort of a bad guy, but, he's okay, and we should support him, and this and that. He never really made a concrete stance in favor of Assad, because he knows what's going on here. He knows the deep state's interest there. He knows Israel's interest there. Okay? So if Donald Trump really wants to deal with ISIS, he needs to deal with the source, Israel. End of story. Okay? That's a fact. No one can dispute this, and I've just given you proof right now. But there's been so much, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, you have top publications around the world, newspapers, talking about how in recent years, Israeli-made bombs, rocket launchers, have been found in Syria. Okay? In other words, when the Assad Syrian army would go and bomb an area where ISIS was, and after, let's say, having achieved victory, they would go and basically gather up all their stuff, all of their weapons, in order to dismantle them and all that. And what would they find? What would they find? Israeli-made rocket launchers. I'm going to show you that now. So this is Jerusalem Post, top Jewish publication out of Israel, J-Post, okay? Syrian army reportedly seizes Israeli-made weapons on their way to ISIS. Gee, isn't that something? Okay? On the way to basically attack ISIS. So it says Syrian army, let me go a little further up here. Syrian army forces confiscated Wednesday morning a vehicle that was coming from the Dara eastern suburbs on its way to ISIS forces containing Israeli-made mines. Okay, here's a reporter's name here, April 27th, 2016. All right, let's look on the screen now. Gee, what is this here? Very interesting. It looks like to me an Israeli-made mine. And there you have it. All right, there you have it. That's from the Jerusalem Post. How lovely. So, basically, Afra is really the go-to source here. There's a lot of other Syrians out there. There's Syrian Girl. She's excellent. She appears a lot, of course, on Alex Jones and other networks now. So she's doing a great job. So we have had contact with Afra, and we support her and what she's doing, and we really appreciate, her bravery and, of course, her contribution to Greek media, because what she says is very vital for us, too, because we need to understand really what's going on in Syria in order to understand what's going on with this migrant crisis and how it's influenced Greece. So let's listen to her for a little bit. Okay, let me restart the video. So basically, all you have to do is Google Afra's name, okay? A-F-R-A, all right, A-D-A-G-H-E-R. Google her name, and there basically you're going to be able to find a lot of the articles she's written. She's appeared on RT. She's appeared on some of the big channels. Here she is.
For the peace in Syria, however, for the countries and its policy towards Syria, countries in the UN, countries in the Arab Gulf.
Okay, it's a little low, and I'm going to have to play it a little bit closer to the screen here. 1 second.
The friends who really care for Syrians and for the peace in Syria. However, for the countries and its policy towards Syria, countries in the UN, countries in the Arab Gulf, all over the world, those countries who are pretending to support Syrians and to care for finding a solution to end this war in Syria and to bring the peace to Syria. The solution is not by a transitional government. The solution is not by holding conferences for talks with terrorist groups who represent Turkey, Saudi Arabia, and even on the Nusra Front. The solution is very simple: to just stop sending ammunition and missiles to the so-called moderate rebels in Syria. They use it in killing and murdering, bombing Syrians. They cause our people to be amputee, to be disabled, and to leave these torn war countries like Syria and Yemen also. In addition to the poverty, to the sanctions on Syria, at least stop arming terrorists. If you really care about ceasefire, about real peace in Syria. Lately, our authorities seized missiles in its way to the terrorists in Damascus from Iran, made in the UK. It is some days before we seized also missiles under the ground in a deep tunnel made in Israel. So the solution is to stop those terrorists, stop arming them, stop giving them the cover by calling them moderate. This is the solution. It's so simple. So simple. Thank you.
Okay, you heard it there. Basically, the whole issue here is the so-called moderate, opposition, whatever, rebels. These people are all terrorists, ladies and gentlemen. There is no such thing as opposition. They all support ISIS. That's what she's saying. And she just talked about how recently, there was found in Syria rockets that were made in Great Britain. There was found other armaments made in Israel. So she sees this stuff on a daily basis, and no one could disprove this stuff, okay? Nobody. Because what she's talking about is real. This is the truth. And we have top U.S. journalists coming out now talking about this. You have top publications like the Financial Times saying how Israel takes a huge portion now of its purchases, basically a ton of illegally extracted Syrian oil from Turkey. Because, as you know, Turkey plays a huge role, basically, in this whole illegal oil trade where you have ISIS soldiers stealing Assad's oil, and then they ship it to the Iraqi-Turkish border, and from there you have all these interested parties that go and purchase huge amounts of this oil. And there are European Union states involved, Israel's involved, and of course Turkey is pretty much the ringleader, and that's why Erdogan has become so rich. So, what we need is basically Donald Trump to recognize all this stuff, and we need him to do something about the migrant crisis, obviously, because the United States government is responsible for this from Obama. So if he really wants to undo what Obama has done, then let him basically deal effectively with ISIS by telling all the main culprits behind ISIS, namely Israel, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, okay? We're talking about states right now that he's completely tolerating, that, he's friends with. I mean, for crying out loud, he has major business interests in Turkey. He has Trump Towers in Istanbul, okay? We need him, okay, if he really loves freedom, if he really hates the New World Order, we need him to tell these nations to stop supporting terrorism, to stop supporting ISIS, because they're influencing all the other nations around them, including Greece, with this huge migrant crisis. I mean, I can go on and on and on about this issue, ladies and gentlemen, but the facts remain. End of story. There's no discussion here. This is the truth. So, So what we need basically is the world community to start really waking up to what's going on. We got to do away with this partisan garbage. There's no such thing as right or left. They all support the same puppet masters. Okay, there's no such thing as Democrat, Republican. In the end of the day, they're controlled by the same very powerful Zionist forces from the top, the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, the usual suspects. We all need to wake up to this, and we need to basically unite as people, as nations around the world, and do away with this New World Order control once in a while. So I'm hoping Donald Trump is going to get this message and do something about all this. Does he know about Israel's main role in ISIS? About the catalytic role that Israel plays in ISIS? Does he know that Saudi Arabia is behind ISIS, that Turkey is behind? Of course he does. What's he going to do about it now? That's the question. What's he going to do about it? Okay? Is he going to put these other two terrorist states on his terrorist ban list, namely Saudi Arabia and Israel? Come on now. Let's get real here, ladies and gentlemen. Let's stop BSing, and let's start basically, naming things as we ought to. Okay? Let's start basically telling the truth like we ought to here, because if we don't, America's lost, Greece's lost, Syria's lost, all of humanity to these very powerful, sinister New World Order forces. End of story. Let's stop the political garbage, the political games here, okay? And let's start waking up and doing something to take back basically our planet from basically these dark, sinister forces. End of story. I mean, I don't even know what else to say here. You heard Afra, okay? So please support her work. And now I'd like to play a video that I made with her a few months ago. So stand by. Hello, everyone. This is John Contreras coming to you from Los Angeles. It is April the 27th, 2016. I have a special video today that I've done in conjunction with my good friend and colleague, Afra Dogger. Afra is a top Syrian reporter and political activist in Syria. She has been revealing the truth about what's been going on basically with ISIS for years now, since about 2011. Of course, she supports the Assad regime, and we all know by now who is behind ISIS. We're talking about the Obama government. We're talking about Israel, Qatar, and Saudi Arabia. In effect, what's going on there is nothing more than a ruse to actually get the Assad government to give in to the opposition. But we know that the United States and all their allies have no good intentions for Assad. That's number one. Number two, she's going to give us an update about basically what's been going on in the city of Aleppo. Recently, there's been a lot of atrocities been going on there. Unfortunately, a lot of missile and rocket attacks there. Thank you for listening today. Please support basically Afra and her work. Support the Syrian people. Support Assad and his government. And get the truth out about what's going on. Wake up your government officials. Wake up Donald Trump. And let's take our nation back and our world back. Thank you for listening. Bye-bye.
listening to UCY.tv. Why don't you stick around for more